Hey everybody, Billy from Billy's Bike Adventures. Thanks for tuning in today and watching the video. Now, as a motorcycle owner, I personally think it's my responsibility to be able to do as much maintenance on my motorbike as I possibly can without having to take it to BMW for a service or a checkup. One of those things for me is being able to check your brake pads, clean them, and look at your clean your calipers as well. Now, in my last video, I showed you how to clean the front calipers on a BMW R1200 GSA. Today, I'm going to show you how to do the rear ones. So if that's of some interest, keep watching and let's get into it. Now, the reason that I need to clean my brake calipers is one, I haven't done it for ages, well actually since I bought the bike. And two is that I've done a lot of winter riding this year, so there's a lot of salt and crap on the bike. I have given the bike a thorough wash, but things like the brake calipers, if you haven't taken them off and given them a good clean inside, there's still going to be a lot of dirt and salt within those brake calipers. Could present a problem later down the line. So today, I'm going to give them a good clean. Here's some of the equipment that you're going to need. A ratchet, okay, to loosen off some of the bolts. You're going to need a T30 and a T40. Now the T30 is to take off the mudguard. The T40 is for the brake caliper bolts. Some long nose pliers. Soapy water and a toothbrush, old toothbrush, not one that you currently use, but some hot soapy water, or warm soapy water, to get with a toothbrush to get right into those calipers and give them a thorough clean. We're going to use some brake clean fluid afterwards, and that is to remove all the excess water. If I can't get into it by drying it with a towel, I'm going to give it a good douse with the brake clean, which is safe for cleaning brake calipers, to make sure that any other residual crap is removed. And you're going to need some Loctite thread lock to put on your bolts when you tighten back up your bolts on the brake calipers on the rear brakes. So that's the kit that you're going to need today. So let's get into it. So first thing we need to do is to remove the mudguard, and we've got 3 T30 bolts to remove here. So let's get that done first of all. Now, as you can see, it's a good opportunity as well to clean around the final drive, to give it a thoroughly good clean for anything that you've also missed while you've got the mudguard off as well. So the next thing that we need to do now is to, there should be on the brake line here, there's a cable tie here. So there's actually a cable connector that's missing to carry the black cable for the speed sensor. And also the brake caliper line as well. So that's missing, so I'm going to need to cut that first of all. So we need to get that done and have another cable tie to connect that back once we have finished. So let's cut that cable tie. Right. Move that out of the way. Now you'll notice I call this black cable the speed sensor, and it is a speed sensor, not a ABS sensor. You check your manual and you'll see that it's a speed sensor. So before you write in and give me any grief, the manual calls this a speed sensor, not an ABS sensor. Now, next thing we need to do is to take out these pins here. You've got 2 pins either side that hold in a rod that goes through the rear of the brake calipers. So you need your long nose pliers. That's one. A bit of control when you pull it out, because you could end up hitting your rim of your wheel. So try and do that as, there we go, that's 2 out. Now this rod is likely to be stuck in there pretty hard. Now I've taken the pin out that goes through the rear of the brake caliper here, that holds the rear end of the brake pads in, and as you can see, this is quite a bit rusty. So what I'm going to do is that I've also got some grease as well, and I'm going to put some fresh grease on here, clean this up first of all, and then put some fresh grease, some high temperature grease on here, just to make sure that that's easily removable next time. So that's the pin out now. So that's the brake caliper brake pads now ready to be removed. What we also need to do now is take out the two T40 bolts that hold the brake caliper in place. So a T40 socket head for your ratchet. Now these are quite tight actually, so that indicates to me that these have already had some thread lock on them, which is good. And we're going to reapply or apply some new thread lock when we put the bolts back in. Right, just remember putting these in place to remember which one came out of where. Now hopefully this caliper should now lift off pretty easy, although I suspect it's not going to, just because they've not been, it's not moved since I've been riding through the winter. So I'm just going to give them a wiggle, a little wiggle. What I might have to do is to remove the rear wheel, because I might not get the calipers off with the wheel on at the moment. So I might have to take the rear wheel off. And for my bike, because I've got quite a fat Akrapovic exhaust, that means me also taking the exhaust off as well. So I'm going to do that very quickly, so that we can take off these calipers and give them a good clean. So exhaust to come off and the wheel to come off. Now before some of you write in and say you should be able to take your wheel off without removing the exhaust, I promise you I cannot do that on my bike. The Akrapovic exhaust I've got is pretty darn fat and I cannot get the wheel out. It's the tyre that's the problem, the edge of the walls of the tyre. I can't get them past the exhaust and the brake caliper. So I have to take both off, unfortunately, and I can't take the wheel off without taking the exhaust off. So please don't write in and moan about or suggest that it can be done. On my bike, it definitely can't because of the Akrapovic that I've got. So now with the wheel removed, and if you want to know how to remove the rear wheel and put it back on, there's a video on my channel about how to take the wheels off and change the tyres. So I'm not going to explain that today. So now we have some space now to be able to hopefully take this brake caliper off the disc. There we go. Right, one of the discs has fallen out straight away. That's fine. That's all right. Wow, I'm just taking the other disc out, and I'm going to leave them as they fall out. Now, on first inspection, I actually could do with some new ones, because you can see from here, look, the grooves on here are almost worn out. So, and fortunately, there looks to be an even level of wear on the brake caliper, on the brake pad. I'm sorry. So, I will put these back in because there is a little bit left in them, but not much. So I'll need to keep an eye on them and potentially change them in the not too distant future. So if we just turn this upside down and just have a look at the mess that is in that brake caliper, it is just shocking how bad it is. So we need to give it a thoroughly good clean. So first things first, soapy water, toothbrush, and we just start giving it a blimmin' good clean in here, because it is shockingly bad. All around the pistons, its piston head itself as well, underneath the piston, underneath both pistons, the top and the bottom. Paper towel, and try and give that as much of a clean inside as I can. Now, what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to press the back brake, and in doing so I want to see how these pistons move. They should move equally, so I'm going to get in a position where I can hold these to the camera and also press the rear brake. Right, so I've got my foot on the rear brake now, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start pumping to see what happens. Right, with a couple of presses I can see that the piston at the back here is moving, but not the piston at the front. So what I need to do is push that back in, push the rear piston back in. Right, that's gone back in, and what I'm going to try and do now is actually pushed the other piston out, which is good. So now if I press again, right, the rear one's moving again, so let's push the front one back in. So one's still moving. So what I'm doing is I'm just pressing the other one down now and holding it there, because the other one now has popped out. So I've pressed that one in and I've held it, and this one has now popped out. So I'm now going to push that one back in. See if I can get both these calipers moving together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use some brake clean as well now, just to get rid of some of that soapy residue that's there. So I'm just going to cover that up there, just so that it doesn't spray anywhere else. I'm just going to give it a bit of a spray in there. Right, that's lovely. Right, that's got a lot of the other crap out. So it's got rid of all the soapy residue, and it should pop back in nice and easy now. Both the pistons are in there flat now, so I should be able to put the brake pads back in no problem whatsoever. So let's put them back in the way that they came out. So that's the offside one going in. And what we need now is the other one to go in. Give that a quick wipe. There we go. That one will go in now. To do now is put this pin back in, but before I do, I'm going to put the brakes caliper back on the brake disc. Oh, I'll put that back in now, that brake pad, but what we need to do is to give this a bit of a clean and just apply a little bit of grease to it. I'm going to get a little bit of grease on there, not too much. Because what I don't want is any of this grease to come off. So I'm just coating it, making sure that it's not going to drip. Right, that's got a nice coating of grease in it. What I'm going to do now is take my gloves off, because I don't want grease going on the brake pads. What I'm going to do now is put the brake pad, one of the brake pads that's fallen out, back in, and then I'm going to insert the pin with the head of the pin coming from the offside. Okay, so the head of the pin's going to be on this side, so you're going to slide the pin back in from the offside of the motorcycle, okay, or the offside of the brake caliper. So this goes back in, that slides back in there. And up. We've got that one there. So hopefully, if they're lined up nicely, that one's in. Right, pin's gone all the way through, which is really good. Really pleased with that. So all that's left for me to do now is to put the secure pins back on. So for the second pin from this side, so there we go. Both the pins back in now, so one here and one here.